Thanks.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Chairman Waxman, Ranking Member Davis, and members of the committee. As you know, my name is Donald Fehr, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Major League Baseball Players Association. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. As I have previously testified before many committees, but specifically this one, 3 years ago, playing Major League Baseball requires talent, drive, intelligence, determination, and grit. Steroids and other unlawful performance-enhancing drugs have no place in the game, and we neither support nor condone the use of such substances by players or by anyone else. We cannot change, but we can learn from the past. Baseball's problem with performance-enhancing substances was bigger than I realized. We understood that a number of years ago when we began the testing programs. In retrospect, action should have been taken and probably could have been taken sooner. Players Association accepts its share of responsibility for what happened, and as I indicated at my press conference following the issuance of Senator Mitchell's report, so do I. Since our first joint drug agreement in 2002, and in particular since I appeared before this committee some 3 years ago, we have worked vigorously to rid the game of performance-enhancing drugs, and the evidence regarding steroids indicates, I believe, that we have been largely successful. On behalf of the players, I reaffirm the commitment to continue that effort. Today, we believe we have the best program in professional sports. It is a program that members of this committee and other members of Congress praised when it was agreed to and implemented. It is independently administered, has state-of-the-art random unannounced testing procedures, and we use the universally acclaimed WADA-certified Olympic lab in Montreal to analyze the samples. The penalties, as has been indicated, are the toughest in professional sports. And it is a program, as Senator Mitchell indicated, that we have worked to improve. Over the last 2 years, even after the 2005 amendments, without any fanfare or controversy, we have agreed on several improvements. Which brings me to human growth hormone. This is a difficult and perhaps a unique challenge. There are currently no valid blood or urine tests for HGH. So what can be done, and what have we done? Well, first, we banned HGH. We've agreed to test for it as soon as a scientifically valid urine test exists. We also have procedures which allow for players to be disciplined, suspended based on evidence other than a positive test, and players have been suspended on that basis. This is the so-called non-analytical finding. Should a scientifically accurate, commercially viable blood test become available, we will consider it in good faith. But as Senator Mitchell noted in his report, the blood test now being developed may be of limited practical utility. And while the union has warned players for years of the risks associated with HGH and other of these substances, the parties can do more by way of education. We have recently discussed with the Commissioner's Office having medical experts meet with players early this season to warn of dangers posed by HGH and other bad substances to reinforce that message. But we can't do it alone. Abuse of human growth hormone, as I think the Commissioner and Senator Mitchell have already mentioned, is not just a baseball problem. It's not even very much of a sports problem. All one has to do to appreciate this is to go onto the Google website, maybe after this hearing, and type in the words, "Where can I buy HGH?" We did this a few days ago, and we got 349,000 hits in a quarter of a second. Ads for human growth hormone and related substances can be found widely distributed in periodicals that everybody reads. Representative Lynch and others have introduced legislation to reclassify HGH as a Schedule III drug, making its treatment comparable to anabolic steroids. I assume that appropriate consideration will be given by the Congress to that bill. Consideration might also be given to taking action in some form against the unlawful online sales and marketing of HGH and other of such substances. Finally, as I have previously suggested, perhaps the Congress should examine whether the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, the DSHEA as it is commonly known, is being adequately enforced. One of the members on the panel in his opening statement or in one of the questions suggested to kids buying stuff in stores. To the extent that that's true, and I think it is, that means it is available in stores and legally. Senator Mitchell and his law firm were hired to write a report, and he served his client well. But I ask you to remember that this was a unilateral action taken by management. As a result, we had no choice but to act as unions are required to act by federal law to represent our members in connection with an investigation with potential disciplinary consequences. If we had done otherwise, we would have violated our statutory duty of fair representation. Even so, while the conduct of the investigation was ongoing, we continued to discuss improvements in our program with the owners. Most of the media reaction to the report has focused on individual players and what they are alleged to have done. That's understandable. But I would ask you also to recognize that the report contains no new allegations of improper drug use in 2006 or 7 when the current program was in effect. In those 2 years, we administered some 6,500 tests with only 5 positive results for steroids. I think it's clear our program is working well with respect to steroids, which are capable of being detected. I recognize that many of you hope that I will today endorse all of Senator Mitchell's recommendations. With respect, I ask that you adopt his suggestion that the parties be allowed time to discuss what can and should be done. You can be assured that you have my commitment, both on behalf of the organization and personally, that the players will discuss all of those recommendations. We have already begun those meetings, and they will need to be expanded to include not only staff but players and the commissioner, as I'm sure he will want an opportunity to express his views directly to the players. Unfortunately, the situation has been muddied a bit by the commissioner's unilateral imposition of some of the recommendations. He did so even though these unilateral changes affect our members, and even though we have never declined to discuss any potential improvements. In addition, the suggestion is there that we should once again reopen our bargaining agreement. It goes without saying that no union, and no management for that matter, takes lightly the suggestion by the other party that it should reopen the agreement before the term ends. The contract is the lifeblood of the union. This makes the process somewhat more difficult, but we're committed to pushing forward notwithstanding that. There are some subjects that we intend to raise in addition to what Senator Mitchell has proposed. We want to make certain that every major league club has throughout its organization thoroughly vetted and qualified strength and conditioning personnel. We believe that unproven allegations against players should not be aired publicly and that fundamental protections of due process should be strictly adhered to. And we will suggest that minor league players who currently do not have a neutral decision maker with respect to an alleged violation of the minor league program should have that opportunity if they wish to challenge a failed test. We also hope to build on one of Senator Mitchell's recommendations. Baseball can do a better job of educating its players and educating the public, and that specifically includes the children that so many of the members here today have mentioned. Telling our nation's kids that drugs will destroy them is only half the battle. And I went to college in the 1960s, and we've been telling people that for all of my adult life, and we're still struggling with it. So perhaps the focus ought to be shifted, in addition to that, to something else, because the nation's high school athletes and their parents will still aspire to scholarships and want to pursue their athletic dreams. So knowing what to do is as important and perhaps more important than being told what not to do. Perhaps players can lead the way in developing nutrition, strength, flexibility, and wellness routines and educating America's youth in that regard. And in an era in which we hear a lot about so-called childhood obesity, perhaps that's a more powerful idea than we can yet appreciate. Let me just summarize and I will conclude. There is no new evidence in the Mitchell report of steroid use in 2006 or 2007. That does not excuse or condone what happened before that, but it is, I think, relevant to examination of the steps we have made. Human growth hormone is a problem, both within sports and generally. There is not yet a test, but we will consider in good faith any valid and effective test which is developed. and we've agreed that if compelling evidence exists, a violation of our program can be found even though there is no positive test. We have not refused to discuss improvements in our program. We will not do so here. We will not refuse to discuss them here. We are committed to discussing Senator Mitchell's recommendations in good faith and look forward to receiving specific proposals from the Commissioner. Last, we've made progress, and I think great progress, especially after the amendments we agreed to in 2005. But let me come back to what I began with. In retrospect, action should have and could have been taken sooner. As an institution, the Players Association bears some of the responsibility to that. As its leader, so do I. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fehr.